Okay, we're not waiting on anybody? Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the May 13th, 2026 Sister City Council Workshop. And we're doing a joint workshop today because we love having our friends over with the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District Board. So welcome, and we can just go around the room real quick and do introductions and maybe just say how long you've been on the board or on City Council to make it slightly interesting. So, start with Mr. Ross.
Gary Ross, 6 years.
Michael Prieden, I've been on City Council for, this is my 8th year.
Elder statesman.
Dario. Councilor Cheryl Pellerin. I've been on council for a year and 5 months and 3 hours and 25 minutes.
Tony Pryor, the fire chief at the fire district, and this year, or this month, will be 2 years. Yep, started in June.
I'm Christy Miller. I'm on the board. I think I started in 2019, so that is about 7 years. Is that right? Yeah.
I'm Jeff Tryans, and I've been on the board for less than a year.
Jack McGowan.
Oh, you just turned it off, yeah. We didn't want to hear what Jack had to say.
Okay. Testing 1, 2. Jack McGowan, Vice President of the board. I've been on the board for a little over 8 years.
Tom Herman, Fire District Board, Treasurer. I've been the board. I'll be getting my 4th year.
Jordan Wheeler, City Manager, coming up on 3 years, and welcome back, Fire District Board. Good to see you.
Sarah McDougall, Council President, and I'm with Cheryl. We started the same day.
You were on 30 seconds longer, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Something like that.
All right, well, we can get started. First up is the 2026-27 Wildland Fire Outlook and Preparedness. And looks like Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District will lead us in this conversation.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having us. It's nice that we're able to get together. We had this meeting last year, and it was a great chance for us to kind of talk through some things that each one of us is doing for each agency and collaboration moving forward. So I put together a presentation to cover the things that you guys really wanted to talk about in this meeting. So the first one we'll kind of cover as I go through this on the shared screen is the slides, the following slides. There's a couple that I pulled from the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center and from ODF's Seasonal Outlook, and really just wanted to highlight a couple of the things that were tracked in both of those that I'd like to say it was a good outlook, but it's a little bit dismal for us moving forward. So as most of you know, that since October, we've had higher than normal temperatures and a low snowpack. So with that above average precipitation, no snow virtually in all of northeast Washington and most of Oregon. It set us up for a year that has started, as many of you know, with some early wildfires that we've already had. As you look at some of those patterns that we looked through, we were in a La Nina and moving into an El Nino. And the next slide will really kind of cover a top right little picture of the weather patterns that are moving forward and what we're looking at transitioning over to right now. And really it's the potential, the bottom bullet point on there is really the thing that we're looking at, because on the El Nino, that is the warmer, drier temperatures that we have, and the potential for those to extend through October this year. So we're going to have a warmer, drier, and a longer season that extends out for us. And really that bottom one, what it means is those monsoons that start in the southern parts of the United States, in New Mexico and Arizona and those areas, they're going to bring up some thunderstorms. And for us, sometimes that produces moisture, sometimes that's dry lightning. So those are the things that really concern us as we move forward. And as you look at that, really on that right, it shows you that whether that the jet streams that are moving, it'll come as, we were hoping they come from in the La Nina from the Alaska, the Gulf of Alaska, but now we're switching to directly to our west, coming straight for us, which is that it brings that warmer conditions that we're tracking and looking at. So those are the influences that we're going to be, and this is really what we're looking at on the temperature and precipitation from June through August, and they're obviously above normal temperatures, and our precipitation really, hopefully that holds true. That's really what I'm looking for in our southern parts, kind of where we're at, that maybe it'll be normal. However, we're anticipating that if it doesn't, then we may have a longer and a more active season. And even though you look at that, the past look, if you look at the past seasons that are the highlighted ones that they're really tracking, just because it looks like the previous ones we've looked at, it doesn't necessarily mean that fire activity is going to coincide with those. But we're anticipating those as a probable outcome. And the typical spring that we're looking at is more towards what was in 2005, with hopefully normal fire activity, but with the warmer and drier conditions trending towards the seasons that we had in 2015 and 18 is above normal fire activity. And really with that snow, the lack of snowpack up high, the drier conditions, looking at those 100 to 1,000-hour fuels. In March, we had some 1,000-hour fuels that were already in our typical August time frame. So those fuels are drying out much faster, and so we're really concerned on if we look at some of that lightning and thunder activity that happens without moisture, that could potentially start some of the fires up high in the high country that could potentially move down towards us. And Ian's probably back there shaking his head that he's heard this probably 100 times already this year as we move forward and look at that. But
Chief, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's a 1,000-hour fuel?
It's the diameter of the fuels. So if you're looking at 8-inch or larger fuels that are down, what type of moistures do they have in those? And of course, the 1 hour, those fuels are grasses, and as you move into the branches and smaller diameter, and it gets up to those. But really what's going to sustain that, you'll have the grasses that'll be the flashy fuels that'll start really quickly and move quick with the winds. But what sustains that and keeps that moving is you look into those 100-hour and 1,000-hour fuels and how that's going to move through those. So we're looking at all of those to be prepared in what we could potentially have this year as we move through the season. And that's really kind of some of the outlooks that we're doing. We've had some good joint meetings with our task force leaders all in Central Oregon, and we hosted the training that was conducted in March with that group at the Parks and Rec right here next door to us, which was great, and we've increased. We went to about 100 attendees on that training, which really gives all of our state, federal, and local partners a chance to get together, prepare for the year. Same thing as it was the initial one that happened last year, and it was kind of ironic that the scenario that they brought up at the end of the training session was one that we experienced here with the flat fire. So that it was great for us a chance to get together and make sure everybody's on the same page. Our radio communications, those things are ready to go. Everybody knows what we're doing when we show up, so we can get to work as soon as possible and have good communications when we're on a fire incident. So it was a great opportunity that will be an annual event that we continue to do moving forward. And then some of the other topics that you guys had on here moving, Mayor Letts, if I can continue on your item B that's on your...
Yeah, or if anybody has any questions or comments about the fire outlook and that he's already covered, this would be a good time to...
I have a general question that I think pertains to this. What percentage of fires in our area are human caused? Ish? 50%? Higher than 50%?
higher than 50%.
Okay. So we have a lot of, we as a community have a lot of control over it if we're
You're
policing ourselves, so to speak.
over 80%.
80%. All right. Thank you. That's all I needed to know.
It's a
It's
very
a-
high level. That's one of the reasons why our focus on education and information that we can get out to the public is critical.
Right.
On making sure, and you know, we're in Central Oregon, so most everybody's really aware of it. But we were with the wildfire prepared fair that we had this year, we were down to 40 some attendees at the event compared to 80 some last year. And I hate to say that, you know, I would think with the flat fire last year that our attendance would have been very high. But that is a testament, I think, to the work that we've been doing. Stevens, for our agency, has done a phenomenal job getting out to the Firewise communities and educating them and doing as much work as he possibly can. Just in Crossroads here just this weekend, with the project that they went through, they were able to do 33 home assessments in a single day out there. And then another 13 the following days, 2 days, which is a pretty good number to get home assessments on Firewise. And we're going to continue to do that. We still offer it free. We have a great staff in our fire corps that is very tuned into what they need to do, how to work with people, to give them the best information on really focusing on that 0 to 5 foot space from 5 to 30, what they can do on their own homes. So that work is continuing, and it's been great feedback and great results on that.
I think long-term that's all fantastic, but we need reminders once in a while about the starting of the fires just to make sure that we're all aware of how often we're our own enemies in a lot of ways.
Yeah, in looking at the weather outlook that we had, it's always been a goal, and we talked a little bit, we kind of mentioned that this morning in an earlier meeting that we had, that it's always nice for us as agencies to be on the same page when we shut down burning for the year. However, this year it didn't quite happen that way with the weather outlook and the calls that we've been having. I presented it to the Chiefs Association, and we decided collectively as a group to close burning on May 1st this year instead of June. And I think that was the appropriate step to take. But so many people are used to burning up until June and are not really keen yet on the online application for the burn process, or with the struggles of that. So we've had a lot of illegal burns that we've responded to over the last month to kind of combat the people they're really just not paying attention, and they're not calling in or checking daily is a burning open, and they're just burning anyways. We've had some that says, you don't come on our property. Well, we have an illegal burn that's happening here, and they don't even want to allow us on their property. So it's very odd that we run into that. So we're going to continue to do what we can to educate as many people as we can, but we may be looking at enforcement steps forward for people that we go to. But I think the best thing for us is to double down on the education piece and get the word out. Julie's done a great job for us on our social media campaign to get that kind of information out. But I would suggest that if it's a possibility that as many agencies as possible can share that or share a link to that, so that no matter if they go on our website or on the city's website, they find that same information.
So, Chief, this is Wildfire Preparedness Month. We've had a lot of, preparedness events, information out. I remember last year, the communication going out as we kind of worked with people on getting together their action plan and knowing how to evacuate. That kind of gave the advice that you're always at a level 1. And I kind of feel like May 1st, we're already starting in that sort of tone of, hey, be at level 1, be prepared, have your go bag ready to go, have a plan, and know your evacuation routes. Um, and then in light of, the outlook for this, I think that's, and maybe the attendance at some of these events, there was a lot that was done last year with the partnerships between C4C and the forums and the panels and the fairs and things that, maybe you've done a pretty good job of getting that message out and doing the assessments and maybe we should have a little trust in our public that they're receiving that message and they are getting prepared. I think another topic we're going to have tonight is talking about defensible space, and I think that's a big part of that, communication that we can kind of pivot to together is be prepared to go, to evacuate, be at a level 1 every spring, summer, especially in a drought season. But by the way, defend your property. There's some, things that you can do that are pretty low-hanging fruit to make your property more resilient as we head into this super El Nino or whatever it's called.
Yeah, they're starting to talk that, not just El Nino, but a super. But I agree, and we can get you as much of that information on handouts that you may want to put here too, so we can provide some of that for you. But I agree, and I had an interview with, Central Oregon Daily News today. They swung by, and that was the topic that they wanted to talk about. And I said that very thing is people should expect to be in a level 1 at all times. And with the testing that they did with Deschutes alerts today, promoting that to make sure everybody's in tune and signed up on that, because we talked about some of the ones that have the risks of can't evacuate on their own or their medical needs that we need to focus on early on. So I think we should continue to double down on promoting the Deschutes alerts to make sure people
Had a very quick question. One of the things that I've observed over my years is one of the most effective ways to get households to do something is to have the kid come from school and say, "Mom, Dad, what's defensible space?" Do we do any of that through the schools? Is there anything where we have a way kind of for kids to go home and talk to their parents about it, or is that just too scary for kids to have to even
I think that's
wrap their minds around?
I think that's a great idea, because October is usually the month that we're in the schools and we're working with them on fire safety, but we often focus on in-home safety and your EDIF, your exit routes in your home. But having that or adding that to it, I think would be very beneficial for the schools. Mm-hmm.
By adding, defensible space education as kids come home and, as they walk up to their front porch, like, hey, by the way, Mom and Dad, maybe we should take this bark mulch out. I just heard from a firefighter that's really dangerous.
Do you have any idea how flammable blue spruce is next to the house?
Well, that's the same thing, because on some of those, the appropriate age group, we give them their plan and they have to take it home and provide their EDIF routes, their exit routes. And they map those out and work with their parents. We could give them the home assessment, which is a handout too, and say, here's 2 of them. Have we done both of these?
And I think when Kellen Klein and I were in Vancouver last month at the Wildfire Mitigation Summit, I talked to some people and in their Fire Smart program in British Columbia, I think there is part of that education component that is going into the schools and talking about it, and some people are sharing stories of funny things like that of the kid coming home and knowing more than Mom and Dad did about their yard or what they should do, and which is obviously a great success story when that information's getting passed through that way. So they're doing that as well. So might look into what they're doing, the materials they have.
As a former educator, I'll tell you, that's effective when you get a parent calling and say, "What did you tell my kid?"
The location for the air curtain burner, what size location is needed and any other specific requirements?
Well, that's our next topic.
Oh, it's on the next topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice segue. Yeah. Yeah, if anybody, if we're done with the kind of fire outlook and preparedness, operationally prepared conversation, yeah, we can move on to the wildfire resiliency. If everybody's ready for that. All right, go for it, Chief.
All right. So we did a lot of work in-house and through the Fire and Life Safety Division. Stephen did a ton of work on this, and it really is. I'm very passionate about it too, and wanting that to succeed for him, because I can see the benefit of the work that we do ahead of time in prevention. That can, if you look at the flat fire with the groups that toured over the last 3 weeks out there, they can see how having a resilient landscape, having a robust response, and then having community engagement for Firewise with the 3 pillars. They call that their cohesive strategy, having those 3 pillars come together. And when you tour out there and you see the work on the Wilt Road out there that's borders that White's Canyon Estates, and how it slowed in there, and the work that the homeowners did in that area, and having a robust response, how the 3 of them, when they come together, how it works. And when you have 847 homes that were directly impacted and we lost 5 structures, that means that the work, all 3 of them have to come together to be able to work. So in us looking at that and what can we do, we're doing a good job at educating the Firewise communities by having the increase from 16 to 36 in a 3-year period with the work Stephen's done. Is what's next for us? What do we do to improve that? And how can we make more of a difference? And looking at working with you guys, and kudos to you guys for passing the Defensible Space Code and the R327. Now we can look at the buffer zone around Sisters proper or around those communities and say, those homes that are going to be directly impacted first from the fire cast or the ember cast, is can we get in there and do work that helps mitigate that? And then as it moves closer into town or more dense population into the structures, now the R327 comes into play where the building components helps to take care of that. So it all comes together with the 2 of those. And so what can we do with our resiliency plan? And by us having an air curtain burner program with a trailer system, that we can come into those communities with the equipment that's included in that. And it's not just the air curtain burner. We have the truck and the skid steer and the dump, a skid steer with a grapple unit that we can grab and we can load in and burn and take care of that. We're not transferring those fuels to a different location and just becoming a problem somewhere else that we're going to have to respond to if it catches fire there. So the best opportunity we have looking at that is we burn it and we get rid of it. And when you take one of these, it's the information of us getting out that they're 95, 96% efficient. So there's virtually no smoke. So there's not a health risk impact to the community as we can come in there. They're safer. We can be the people that are burning it, that are trained professionals, that we can get out there. So what we need is to go into those Firewise communities, touch base with them and say, we can plan an event with you to where you may not have the equipment necessary to haul it off to the dump, but if you can just get it out to the edge of the road, we can come grab it with this, load it in, bring it to this air curtain burner and burn it. And it can produce a biochar, which is some of the best fertilizer you can get. So when we're done, we leave that there and it goes back to the people in the community that want to plant them in their gardens. So it's an opportunity for us to go in to these areas, touch base with the people that need it, and really do mitigation work in all of these communities. So I thank the board for approving our program. There was a lot to think about that goes into it because there's a cost. There's a cost to all of it. So how are we going to implement that? And so we've submitted in a grant through Bynum, Wyden, and Merkley, and we've received letters back or calls back from both of from Merkley and Bynum, Merkley's and Wyden's together, but they have approved our plan, and Bynum's office said ours is one of their top on their list to move forward with this, and this includes all the equipment, including looking for a used stationary one. That's the large one. That's where we would like to partner with the city on a location to put that, to be able to have fire-free weekends and have people be able to bring those in, bring their debris in, and then we can burn it on a site instead of on the location, because we're not going to be able to touch all the communities as quickly as we would like to, but we have another opportunity with a stationary unit to do even more, and that'll take staffing that comes along with that. But our goal, is you can see our focus on there, is to implement that high efficiency fuel reduction and community engagement, especially in that 0 to 5 foot space. That's really what we're targeting, is getting everything away from your homes or your businesses. And then if we can significantly reduce the probability of home ignition, we've won. We've tackled what we're really trying to accomplish by this. So that's really what we're focused on. And then the two of them that are included, that's the trailered unit and the stationary one. The trailered unit is about a 7-yard unit that's mobile, but you take the stationary one that's a 30-yard air curtain burner, and they run on hardly any fuel per day. It's a little diesel-powered air unit, so if you can think of sheetrock that's super thick, lining the interior walls on them, we take a little bit to get it started in there, and then once you get it started, you fire up that pump that runs, and it's just a mass air that blows everything back in, and that's why it burns so hot, and it keeps the smoke in there. So it's kind of reburning until you have everything produced to just ash or that biochar. So that's how they work in there, and it allows us to get in there. So really looking at locations for that stationary unit is what we would be approaching, or looking at the city if there's a location. I've heard, the one, if you guys are looking at the recycling location of that not being there anymore and not being a potential, I know we do have, that's a good business district area, I think, in there, and you have a little bit on the new subdivision that's to the west of there, but with the efficiency of how they burn, I think there's going to be very little to no smoke impact on the residents. And then everything else around there is, you got pavement and businesses, so there's not trees, there's not things around there. It is a great location, but if there's a better location that the city potentially has, or we can come up with, then we'll also look at that. Where is the best place to put that?
So I think some questions about the stationary burner would be DEQ regulations and that permit process, and how they look at, the air quality concerns, but also setbacks from other structures and, residential zoning and things like that. And I don't know if you've had a chance to do any research or reach out to DEQ about that, but I think they're all permitted still.
Yep.
Even the mobile ones, right?
Yep, part of our program is getting those permits. And so they used to be very expensive, but now their goal, or the state's goal, is to get those permits to nothing. So there's zero cost on it. So we've included that in part of our program, is getting those permits in there, but they're down to less than $5,000 for the permit now. So, and if they keep moving forward, their goal, they can see the benefit of those and how efficient they are. So their goal is to get those permits down to zero cost.
Yeah, it's not black beans.
Yep.
There's like a technical, appendix to it and everything.
Yep.
Do you need to hire somebody to kind of do the science of wind direction and all that, as you look at different sites, where it might work in a urban environment?
Yeah, and that'll be getting our folks, and Stephen will be our person that will be getting trained on that and submitting it through our Fire and Life Safety Division, the permits and for that, and the training that they need.
Is there a
I would assume that wherever it's located, it would be available to anybody in the fire district.
That's correct.
Is there a set of specifications as to what the property would need? Like, it needs to be this big, like underneath it has to be this kind of material, that kind of...
Well, the more you have that's either gravelled or pavement or non-combustible stuff around there, the better it is. And then the spacing for that, we can provide that for you, of what you need around there. But those trailered units, they're bringing them into subdivisions where there's trees and there's everything right next to them. That's why they're so efficient. With the equipment that we have, we would make sure that it's prepped wherever we place it, for the trailered unit, that is. But the stationary one, it would be nice to have a location that is gravelled or non-combustible materials, and even the grass area, if we were able to have that mowed down or treat it before this season when we plan to use that. If we had a winter like we had this winter, we would have been able to do those throughout. And that's staffing dependent, obviously, because we have to have somebody there to staff it. But you take years like this, we could have done work all winter long on that stationary unit, and even with the trailered unit.
I'm very excited about the concept of a stationary unit being somewhere here in town, but the one thing that concerned me a little bit in the discussion is transporting the material to the site. The average homeowner with a lot of pine needles probably doesn't have anything capable of transporting them other than a garbage can, which fills up real fast. I can tell you by experience, we filled 2 of those big totes that we get from Republic every other week, and we've been doing it for 2 months, and we have just made a dent. So I think that when I hear the portable one coming in and having the bucket scooping it up and putting it in, that's attractive to me. For a lot of people, if you don't have a pickup truck and you don't have a trailer, trying to transport that material to the burn location could be an issue. And I don't have an answer to the question. I'm just thinking that's something we need to consider when we think about placing this unit. How are we going to transport material to the burn site for those folks who don't have the ability to do it, but live in an area where we want to be sure we get that material out?
Yeah, and we have thought about that also, and the onus will be on the homeowners to bring those in. We won't be able to provide that hauling service for them. And then to clarify, the needles, we won't be able to burn the needles in there. We're going to augment that. We'll continue to look for grant opportunities for dumpsters. So the best opportunity over there would be you have the air curtain burner and you have a dumpster. So if they brought in needles in them, we would have to put them into the dumpster because the air curtain burners aren't made, the needles are too dense and you can't keep the fire burning with those. So it's really the larger debris, the limbs and those things, or low needles that we'd be able to burn in the air curtain burner. Then we'd advocate for some of the Firewise communities that have their programs, or they're doing their dumpster programs like Tollgate and Crossroads and those folks, that they continue to do those, because to get rid of the needles, that makes the most sense. We're still going to have to do something different with them. But if there was the ability or the availability for us to work with Republic, because that's really the thing that we've really tried to keep the cost down. That cost has went up from $250 to $800 plus for a dumpster now to have those brought out. And it used to be we could have those hauled and they would come, when they were full, they would come pick them up and drop another one off at the same cost. And now that it's a cost for one time and it's taken away and it's not brought back. So we have some work to do with Republic to see if we can work out a better deal. Yeah, to work through that. But that's some of the things that we're trying to target when we're looking at this, because we know we're going to have to augment this program with a dumpster one because we can't do the needles. Yeah.
May I ask a question, please? Real quick, the grants that you're going after, does that pay for the program? Does it pay for the equipment as well, such as the stationary burner? Is that going to be financed mostly by this grant, do you think?
Yes. The equipment.
Equipment.
The equipment. The district has taken the stance to, one, for the local option levy. Part of that is summer or staffing to help with wildfire upstaffing, and with this mitigation efforts, it's a combination of both. So that's that's put into as part of the levy. Stephen's position is also part of that, moving forward. So the district, and please speak up if I'm covering stuff that you want to, but that's what we've moved forward with. Is we have been receiving the State Fire Marshal's grant for our upstaffing, which provides our seasonal wildfire staffing, additional staffing, but we did not receive it this year. And so we're going to be coming up with another plan to do that staffing, which in a way, we're bummed that it happened that way, but it's great because there's a lot of agencies that are now applying for that. And this year there was only 3 agencies that received that grant that had a $2 million budget or more. And so it's really went down to the smaller agencies that really could use it. So we know we have an area that needs it, and we're going to focus somehow to get that. And that's another opportunity to work with the city. Is there grant opportunities, or does the city have additional funding that they could help us with some of that staffing to help in these mitigation efforts?
I think it's important to note that if the local option levy does not pass next week, that we would have some work to do on a plan B to be able to carry out this entire operation.
No pressure.
Why does your program have to go through state legislation? I'm not connecting the dots there.
Well, the district doesn't have the money to purchase the equipment. You're looking at just under $500,000 to purchase the equipment needed for this program. So our budget is already tight as it is, and keeping up with the current demands, we don't have the additional funding to buy this equipment.
It's all about the money. Okay, the federal.
Yeah.
Okay. So every district that wants to do one of these programs, like for example what you're doing here, that needs federal money is having to go through that lengthy process, unfortunately.
Not necessarily. I think Black Butte Ranch that's part of their service out there as a ranch. They've had that, so I can't comment. I don't know if they submitted a grant to purchase that or not. But just as our district, then there's some programs that are happening over on the west side, but quite frankly, they don't have as much critical danger as we have here to make that. And I don't think there's none that I know of yet that are doing the mobile ones, other than private contractors. And the board also took a stance is this is not really the business that we want to be getting into. We would love to see private contractors come in here and start doing this because I think there's opportunities for them, but we can show them that it makes a difference. And if we can start encouraging them to come in, the more that comes in here and starts operating, the more that's going to get done. And we're just, everybody's helping each other.
Do you have any ETA on
Could be,
that process to get through the legislation?
could be 6 to 12 months.
Private contractors, with the mobile burners, is it more for large landowners as opposed to the smaller, more like rural neighborhoods that are in Sisters Country?
Yep, that's correct. From what I've seen, from what we've seen, yeah, they're more like the one we went down to in Lapine. It was a large tract owner that seen the value of that, and they hired a company from the west side that came over and spent a few days taking care of, I don't know, there was probably 50 acres that they took care of down there.
So HOAs could band together and do an assessment or use HOA funds.
They could.
Well, right now for Crossroads, what we have is Chipper Day. So we have vast amounts of limbs all over the community. They're all going to be chipped up in the community. Well, we could do the same thing with Burner Day if we had that option, as opposed to just hauling it somewhere else, still as a flammable substance.
Yeah, hopefully, putting the wood chips next to the homes.
Oh, darn, that's the plan. We all come get it and just, no. Hmm? Yeah, exactly.
So I know we've, the city and fire district and others have been trying to engage with public more on this issue. Is maybe hopefully an opportunity for them. I don't know if you've had any more in-depth conversations with them or the county, being, the operator of the landfill. And obviously there's going to be a new, bigger landfill eventually somewhere. And, recognizing that, there's this fuels problem, good problem to have. Even they've been bringing in more and more fuel every year that they don't want to handle with. So I was just curious if there's been any conversations in the last few months with either of those entities around these.
I think Stephen has checked with the counties, and I think their process, they were still trying to get some of the larger stationary burners, but I don't know where that process is at. But I think they could still use one even at their landfill over there on just east of us. That would help them, because if many of you have taken stuff over there to that and you drive down past there, it's enormous what they have there. So even with the work that we would do in our fire district area, they could, each one of those landfill sites could use one of those large stationary ones and do a lot of good work. But I don't know where they're at for their funding and if it's moving forward. And we, oh, sorry. Yeah, and we did partner with them in White's Canyon right post flat fire to provide quite a few dumpsters that they did load up with a lot of that stuff. So maybe they snuck it in, I don't know. But they did get rid of a lot of burnt wood that they did, many dumpsters. And then they did, just like Jeff was talking about, they did a lot of chipping up there, but it was just chipped and put back on the ground. It wasn't hauled off anywhere. But some of those the certifications, there's some of those that we're striving for to meet. And then Fire Marshal Puller right now is back at IBHS. He was invited from the State Fire Marshal's office to go back there and look at what many of the things that you guys are looking at from the R327 in the Ember casts. And he sent some great videos back today of the testing they were doing at that facility. But we're going to continue to work with them to see if there's certification processes that we can go through that may help on the insurance front. So we're going to continue to work with that. And I think some of this work that we can do, and we can track some of this, Stephen's got some new information that's just come out that they're using some programs that insurance companies are looking at from this. So this mitigation work could potentially help in the insurance realm, as many of you know, is one of the major issues that we're looking at. But we have to have, and it's included in the bottom bullet point, is some quantifiable data. So the acreage that we're treating per year and the community compliance, how are we having more percentage in those Firewise communities that, because as you know, you can have a Firewise community, but that doesn't mean every resident in there is part of that. And we're going to be looking at that. Are we having more engagement in those communities, Firewise communities, and are we gaining more? We'd like to see our percentage of those be in the 80 percentile of residents within a community that take part in it. And then by the IBHS and some of that work, we have an advocacy with the insurance companies and have them have a seat at the table so we can actually talk to them. What can we do that can help potentially in our areas? That's the tough part right now, but I think what we're doing with him being back there and working with them is the first step.
Are they burning a building facility. Did
Yeah.
you ever watch that?
Yep, yep, they
Okay.
were burning one building with another one right next to it and had their massive fans. The fan system as big as that whole wall. And they blow the ember cast from a burning building to the next one that's treated with the hardy plank siding, those 1/8" or close soffits, and the Class A roofing and all the materials that they're looking at. And you can see when they're burning and it's withstanding quite a bit. It's pretty neat to see.
Nice. Okay. Any other questions, first of all, or comments on that, or we can move on to the next topics?
Yep, yep. Yeah. I agree, but having that certification is a cost through IBHS. So there's an initial cost, and then the recurring cost after I think 3 years is $25 or $50 or $75 to 250. I think it's $50 or $75 to re-up on it at 3 years, I believe.
Have you seen any indication yet that insurance companies around here are taking that certification to heart with? I know there was one person who did it, but I'm just curious if you've had any conversations with insurance carriers that, I mean, I'm not saying we don't want to move in that direction, but I wouldn't want to promise something to a homeowner that we couldn't deliver on.
Right, and we haven't. I mean, Mayor, you've probably had plenty of conversations on that same topic with people in insurance companies out there, but that's why the new information that Stephen got was pretty exciting to know that insurance companies are looking at this model that is tied in with this. So if they do start looking at that, maybe that makes a difference. I don't know, but what we have been hearing though is that we were 4 or 5 insurance companies that were writing policies a year ago, and we're down to less than that now, from what I hear. So that's the difficult part, and that's really one of the major focuses of part of this is we have to do. We're going to try to do what we can to make a difference and potentially have insurance companies looking at writing policies again, or at least have a seat at the table. So that's a great question, though.
Real quick, is there, does IBHS have a city certification program or anything like it? And if not, can we?
I mean, they have the neighborhood
Communities, yep.
certification program, or wildfire prepared neighborhood. I think standards now that they released last year.
It was on the last slide, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
It's not community-wide, but it could conceivably be if you apply it to new neighborhoods.
Well, I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Sisters, right? So let's talk about it.
Yeah,
and find out what the steps are to get there, even if there's not steps yet.
And
Michael,
I think,
that's the document I sent last week.
yeah, and I think that's the work that the State Fire Marshal's office has been doing with IBHS, and that we're partnering hopefully partnering with them on is there an opportunity for us to build a Firewise community so that they look at the whole community or a subdivision that's built out, that's all built with those standards?
And I think you have a very receptive audience here at this table.
Yep.
There you go.
ISO rating affected by wildfire and insurance, carriers?
Not supposed to be.
Okay. Should I not talk about it?
That's a tricky one, and we've had those discussions as the Central Oregon Fire Chiefs Association. As we take so many steps and spend money and personnel and equipment and things to meet ISO, to keep our ISO rating down to a 3, which is phenomenal. But yet they're getting word that the insurance companies aren't even looking at ISO anymore. They're looking at risk in there. So they're supposed to be looking at our ISO rating, but I think many companies are looking at spreading their risk and not having too much in there. And they won't tell us directly that, but I think some people are getting that information back to them.
All right. We can move on to wildfire resiliency and defensible space next steps, and that's kind of conversation between the district and the city here. So
I'm happy to just roll this topic out for the council and board to discuss, and kind of start with the council goal around this topic. And as we head into the next fiscal year, the strategy is to continue to adopt local actions to support or increase community wildfire resiliency. And a lot of the background work that's gone into this already is, of course, we have the defensible space regulations now adopted in our development code for new development. And then we have the R327 building hardening code, which is when that development gets built and they have to build to that standard, with the 1/8 and the hardy plank and Class A roofing, et cetera. And so now the council has adopted a goal to work with the board and the district on what are those defensible space measures that we have in our development code that we can apply to our municipal code for existing development, right? Obviously, always going to focus on education, incentives, communication, right? But there are other things that we can look at actually in our code to make our existing property, existing developments more wildfire resilient. And that's 5 feet, right? It's firewood storage. It's doing something like we're doing tonight with becoming better at managing things like burning in town. But
Wooden fences against houses.
wooden fences, right? And we understand that this is not an easy policy, right? It's one thing if you're talking about new development. Now, as we start to pivot to existing development, that could come at a cost, right? And it could be hard to implement these things when you're asking, 2,000 property owners to start making changes to their property to become more wildfire resilient. And, the conversation we just had about insurance kind of feeds into this, right? Because if they're making these changes, it could, on the back end, help them, right? Get homeowners insurance and protect their property that way. So the council's gone on tours of our downtown as sort of this effort to kind of do some fact finding, kind of understand the lay of the land. That's one angle, is how do we incentivize development in the commercial districts.
and tours with fire district staff.
With the fire, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
right, with the fire experts. And, as part of our goal-setting meetings, kind of started to talk about what's the low-hanging fruit, understanding it's not really easy pickings here, that when you're adding new regulations to the municipal code, but getting the fire district's advice, the folks that do this work every day and do these assessments of what's that first step to ask people that have mature yards, that have homes that have been here for 40, 50 years, what are we going to ask them to do first? Is it that first 5 feet? Is it getting rid of that bark mulch? Is it the wood fences, and how do we incentivize that? And so what is the fire science telling you, or, what advice do you have for what's that first step that we should take?
Fire science and social science, I think, is the
Well,
other part of it.
Yeah, the combination of both, right? But going back to our resiliency program, it's the focus on the 0 to 5 foot space, and that includes non-combustibles. And that would be including the fences, anything non-combustible within the 0 to 5 foot. But I agree, that comes with a cost. Sure, you can do that, and that's a great step for all new development, but what type of incentives is there for current property owners to do that? And that's where, your decision-making or incentives or grants or whatever you do is a great step. I would love to focus on that because that's really what the science tells us is going to make a difference. Along with the R327, there's many components when you drive around here and even on our walk-arounds looking at buildings with components that they have on their construction. There's not hardy plank siding on everything. It's, there's cedar siding, there's wood siding, there's all different kinds of combustible vinyl siding, those kind of things that are on places that would cost an enormous amount of money for owners to change those. So there has to be some type of incentive program, in my opinion, that encourages them to do that, to take those steps. And how we get there, I don't know, but that should be our focus, is looking at that, the 0 to 5 and the components.
I think, writing code can be done, right? We have staff that can do that. We have the development code as a model to kind of start at. I think where the partnership gets important with the fire district is how do we work together on that incentive program? We have a kind of a proven example of a rebate program now with our dark sky lighting where we've offered incentives for people to make changes to comply with the new regulation. But coupling that with like the assessments that, your Corps does and going out and doing the wildfire, preparedness assessments would be, maybe part of the requirement, right? You come to the city and if you've gotten the assessment, maybe you can get an incentive to implement, the first 5 feet changes or something.
That's a great idea.
And
just as a new member of the board, one of the frustrations I have about Firewise, which is wonderful, is that we don't go back and go, okay, how much have you done? You're 80% there. How come what's the problem with getting the other 20%? You're 0% there. So having a link to some sort of an incentive person where the person signs up and says, I want to be part of this incentive program, come do the assessment would be great in my opinion.
And we could provide that. We're going to provide that. We already do that for free to come out and do the incentives or the assessments. It's the follow-up, which we can still come out and do. And there's some of them that we've done for the IBHS inspections, which that happens, as you talked about. You have to submit your pictures of there. Then they'll give you a report of what you need to do. Then you have to follow up that you've completed those to receive your certification. So it's pretty easy to do the same thing. It's just a follow-up assessment.
I think this certification, all these conversations are linked together, right? Is important for the ongoing enforcement and compliance, right? So, you can verify that the first 5 feet have been taken care of, right? But what happens when the next owner moves in, or they change their landscaping the next year, or you have the seasonal sort of issues with furniture or firewood storage and things like that. So there's the ongoing enforcement and compliance aspect to this that I think is tricky with variables like vegetation, furniture, all sorts of things that people can add to their property after they've been, checked out and added their defensible space.
That's another one that goes for the remodels. So the permitting process that comes from you, if somebody comes in to add 200 square feet or more, you guys initially talked about that, but pulled that out of the code, which I think was smart because you start with a base and then you look at what are you doing looking forward, because you are looking at a major cost. So when somebody adds so many square feet to their residence on a remodel, that they look at coming up to code on the R327, but what square footage is the magic number? I don't know. But it would be another step to look as you revise that code and look at it again. But I think you should really start having some discussions on that of your remodeling and what it takes to trigger that to come up to code. And it is a huge expense. I totally agree on that.
Yeah, one of the, I think, things we grapple with is, just like any other organization, is constrained resources. So the time it might take us to implement code that would apply to, say, a 200 square foot or, increase in
Addition.
layout addition, versus doing education to get people to clear their first 5 feet. I mean, all those things end up in the same department that's doing our UGB expansion. And believe me, it's not like I'm trying to fight it. It's just trying to be realistic about, how do we make the choice of which one we can do this year or which ones we can do this year. So I just want to say that if you don't see movement in all the directions at once, it's because we are just trying to, do that.
Totally agree. And I think you guys are leading the way. So kudos to you. I mean, how many cities have passed both of them so far? Not many.
But if you see, I look to all of you, like for priority helping, that, I could make up priorities because of what I see through my lens, but if you see like, oh, wow, I think this might actually be the other thing, the one that you should do first. If you see us going down that path,
Well, on the walkthroughs that we conducted with everybody, looking at some of the opportunities in between some of those buildings or the businesses, is you have many that are less than 10 feet apart on how they're built out, but yet it's not fire-wise in between them. So, and Jordan and I talked about this, is there an incentive, is there a way for us to work together so you have a gravel program or something that they can come in and we provide the gravel, or you guys provide the gravel somehow that we can come in and help get the work done in between some of those. So I think there is some low-hanging fruit on some of those that can be done. And of course, for us, it's always about staffing. We don't have a lot of extra staffing to be able to do that, and it's going to be incumbent upon us getting the levy passed for that mitigation folks that we can bring on as temporaries. But that would be a goal to look forward to be able to do that. And I think we can get some of that work done within the next couple of years.
Yeah, I speaking for myself, I do see it as like kind of a two-prong, one addressing residential and one addressing maybe our downtown commercial area. And I do appreciate the tours that we've been taking on. It was nice to see it through somebody else's eyes with, that just sees it all differently. And I got a tour to myself, so I got to ask extra questions. That was cool. But I feel like maybe we will be able to go down both those paths, residential plus the commercial, but maybe not all of both at one time.
Yeah, and I think it's an incentive program. There has to be some way that's built out that they understand, because it is a cost to them. Rents are high. So many businesses are just barely making it as it is right now. And now you ask them to put something else on their plate. That's something that they don't think about. It's not the first and foremost thing that they're worried about. So us targeting a few of those and having, even on the walk around, we probably had 5 places that we said, okay, this would be a great one for a first step. And once we can show the businesses and the public that we're taking action in there, and there's a program that's available for them, I would be asking, or we would be looking at the city for a lot of help in that. Maybe we can provide the people that go out and look at those and say, this is what you need to do, this is what we would recommend. And then once you do that, we'll come back. Or maybe it's one of those projects that we had a little time that we could schedule and say, hey, we have some people that we can go in between this building. If you guys can bring the gravel, we can go in and help do some of the work. So we can look at some of that moving forward if everything passes for us. But again, it's a partnership. We need, if you guys are invested in it, how can we help in that? And so we can really sit down and talk a little bit further.
I just heard you volunteer labor. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's Stephen talking there, and God bless him. He's energetic and he's super passionate about it, which is great, you know, and he walks around and he has a different view when he's looking at these. And he looks at these and he's like, this is an easy project to take care of here. So you can do the one-offs and the work with the grant, thanks to Kellen in his agency. What we'll be doing with the post office is the work around there to get them on their 0 to 5 defensible space. And it's those opportunities that we can look at and move forward with. But it's the funding that comes in that gives us the money to be able to go out and do those.
Landlord doesn't live in this community. Maybe in Portland or Seattle, where, so, you know, they're even going to be reluctant to let us do improvements between the buildings because they don't own the building. So I think that's a little bit of a barrier that, you know, Jack I have a suspicion that the absentee landlord would leave with the thought of someone having a good improvement and not cost them.
Is there anything in our code right now that allows the city to say, this is a hazardous property and it must be fixed?
I mean, it depends on the definition of what is an imminent threat to life and safety. I think for, you know, our code enforcement purposes, a lot of it deals with more nuisance properties or tall grasses, right? A lot of people this time of year start getting letters if they haven't mowed their fields or something like that. But in terms of fire fuels and fire risks, I don't think there's enough there yet. You know, to say, hey, you have bark mulch, you need to replace that with
I mean,
rock
wouldn't
mulch.
that be the kind of thing you could just have in the code where you were looking for the real worst outliers and say, look, this is in the code now. You can't do that anymore. You don't have to reside your house, but again, if this is a hazard, I mean,
Yeah, those are the things that we're going to be grappling with here soon. And also, you know, I think the dark skies, I look to the dark skies change we made to the code as an example. That's something partially because of the dark skies program, you know, they really want you to be compliant. And so it's kind of a 5-year runway that we have for people to become compliant. So it's not that the day that we passed it, everybody had to go out and be compliant. You know, we understand there's time and money involved. You know, this one's a little harder because, you know, you never know when the fire is going to come. It could be next year. It could be never. We don't know. So, but in my mind, I'm thinking it would probably look like something like that. Or if we do code changes, it doesn't mean we have lots of codes. There's thousands of code violations out there. You know, we don't go out looking for them. Our system's basically based on complaints right now, complaint driven. You know, so yeah, there's these kind of gray areas in there of not being, you know, too heavy-handed, but, you know, we do have to have some guardrails eventually on what's going to keep the community safe.
I mean, obviously, we have to have an education component at the same time. So
sure, of course.
We're all very aware of all these issues and stuff, but we also know that even 20 years from now, it's not going to be 100%, but we just keep inching forward a little at a time, like governmental entities do very well, which is inching forward slowly. But thinking thoughtfully, I think we can get there, of course. I mean, bark mulch is awful. We already know about it. So that is low-hanging fruit, and we're going to get there pretty darn soon, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's a question I have, and you know, beyond like looking at the 0 to 5 feet, like what, and it doesn't have to come out now, but like input on what is the most egregious thing that you can see that might be easier to put into code, because it's probably only 5 places in the city you see it, and every time you drive by it, you're like, oh my gosh, that place is going down. You know, because I think for me, I want to.
Actually, one of them just did. You know, every time I drove by that place and it just burned down, I would go, that thing's going to burn down.
Yeah,
sure enough, it did.
It's 'cause I think to begin with, we're going to want to be very conservative on what we change in our code versus education to start. But there may be a few things that if you see and you're like, that's really just not okay. I think personally, that's one of the things I'm looking for.
But that's definitely the benefit of municipal code as compared to development code, right? I mean, it's the whole thing. It's everybody. So we're going to have to be really deliberate and obviously conservative and have those education components. And I think that we're all in agreement that we're going to be doing some of that stuff. But I think that the larger conversation is not just the low-hanging fruit, because we have long-term goals too. We want all the buildings to be building hardening down the road somehow, and we have to provide input on that. So when we're talking about these strategies, yeah, there's low-hanging fruit strategies, absolutely. But there's the medium ones and the long-term ones too, and we have to talk about all of them at the same time, right at the beginning, so we can prioritize and make a strategic plan and figure it out. And I think that these are the conversations we're having right now, right? So just let's all keep it in mind. It's not just the low-hanging fruit. Obviously, that's the easiest stuff to do, but it's all the long-term goals that we have to keep in mind and make sure that they're all on the radar, even if it's farther down the road.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's frustrating for me is that, when we look at the code that we implemented for new construction, there's a period of time before that code takes effect. So you can see examples of new construction in this community that are very visible from the highway, with wooden fences touching between buildings that are 6, 7 feet apart, because those all get in prior to. They wouldn't be allowed under the current code to put them up today because building permits were built prior to the code taking effect. But I think that's it's a problem that frustrates me as a city councilor. I understand the whys. I don't like the outcomes of the whys. Yes, I think we look at some of these other things too. That's going to be the key. Is how do we implement some of these things in the downtown business area and also the cones, and make sure that when we say we're going to do it, that it happens. And someone doesn't get too quick and say, oh, I'll put red rock down and stuff, so that can come in right now. So when you see some of those things around town, you wonder why that apply under the code, because those are prior to the code taking effect. And that's one of the problems. It's a cost of doing business, trying things. I'm sure public safety.
I have a clarification or question. Somebody builds a new house tomorrow, pulls a permit, so they have to do defensible space, home hardening, especially with the defensible space. They do that, and then it's built. Now they're under the banner of municipal code after it's built, right? So is there kind of an urgency to really work on defensible space first, for instance, so that, somebody can build it out and then the next year they can change their whole the landscaping? In perpetuity? I mean, does it hold that? But if it was just somebody in a vacant lot, one-off, that there isn't a master plan or anything like that, is that?
Still going to have to meet the new new code.
I don't think you have to do a fire prevention control plan for just one lot development,
Right,
And
but in
R327.
perpetuity. Okay.
Yeah, so if there was a code violation, then it would be a code violation from that development. If they, so, I mean, this is, so the
Yeah.
difficulty with doing just say, take the example, talking about the policy work here and in a new round of implementing something as simple as, we're going to ban bark mulch in the city of Sisters, right? And we've all gone through this experiment, probably this thought experiment. You can go over to Ace right now and buy a bag of bark mulch as a new homeowner in Sisters that bought a house and wants to plant a garden and plant a rose garden next to your house, and you put bark mulch down. And how do we capture that after the fact, right? Like, it's one thing to try to talk to landscaping companies, put that in our code and educate, put it in our newsletters, but there's a market that is happening. There's landscaping companies in Redmond that do jobs.
We only control 2 square miles. We can't control the buying habits of anybody outside of our city.
Enforcement.
Yeah.
Having the fire district actively involved in doing these assessments, evaluations, and recertification programs to make sure that people are not making
It'll be complaint driven.
But it's also highly likely that if you have an inflammable new fence, that you're not going to replace it with a flammable new fence. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's unlikely.
I do want to do a time check. We have just about 5 minutes, and so want to make sure that people got to say something or ask a question that has been burning, no pun intended.
Here's just the last slide in there.
Okay.
Just some things to think about of collaboration moving forward. One of those things is we just talked about in the enforcement, who is going to be taking care of that enforcement as it moves forward, and then the collaborative grants of us working together, staffing capacity if the city is able to assist in some of those, and then inspections and plans. I really would like to talk about that on if there's a fee that's on a business fee that the city's taken to where we can start recouping some of the costs of our fire marshal doing all of these inspections. Because it's a lot of work for him to go out and do these, and we collect nothing for that. It's just part of the property tax that's coming in right now. So, and it's getting more and more work for him to do those. So, I'd really like to look at something within the city or with the city if there's some of the bed tax or one of those that can come in that we can have. Or if there's a fee that's put in on those businesses to where we can recoup some of the cost from our Fire and Life Safety Division that's spending a lot more time on plans reviews and pre-inspections and those things. He's extremely busy now with the work that he's really put into place over the last 3.5 years. And then making sure that on the UGB expansion that we're able to have a seat at the table when we start looking at build outs and making sure the or projects that you do, yeah, or water designs and the potential for upgrades on the water system, or potentially out some of our training ground areas, or looking at what they're doing in the expansion. Is there the water adequate for us for fire flows and the turnarounds and those things? Just want to make sure that our apparatus will be able to fit on the road systems and the turnarounds and the subdivisions and those. Just would like to make sure that we have a seat at the table. I know we'll have to do them on the plans reviews, but that's another step that we're doing as part of that.
It's all good stuff, and an hour and a half isn't enough.
Yep, it does. Nope. Yeah, and it's really part of the county because the county's responsible for that. But the county has a person that'll be retiring in a couple of years, and I don't know if there's a plan moving forward with that. And currently our fire marshal is doing a lot of those inspections, or working hand in hand with them.
You know the answer to this, Chief. You don't have districts don't have the statutory authority to adopt a fee for building inspections or fire life safety inspections.
Not that I know of, but I don't have a solid answer for you.
Just thinking about the business license.
Yep.
Having a fee on the license for that. I think we probably want some sort of mechanism to ensure that there is a rolling list. And I know you want to do annual inspections. It's probably hard to get to.
We can't. I mean, there's too many businesses. There's no way he can get to annual inspections on them. It's every 2 to 3 years.
I would think that nothing in the special districts legislation would prevent that, because port districts, water districts, park districts all charge user fees and those sorts of things, and they also charge SDCs in some cases related to the services that they provide, particularly
ambulance fees and those, no, but other than that.
Um, we would be inviting them into our, like, area planning party. Yeah, yeah. Just checking. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Well,
No, we've enjoyed the collaboration with the city already. I mean, it's been phenomenal, really.
I have one collaboration question, comment. So last summer when all fires were banned essentially outside of actual regulated Forest Service campgrounds, I went around to all of our retailers, all 5 or 6 of them that sell firewood, and said, hey, can you guys take this away? And one person said, the next thing you're going to be doing is ask me to not sell knives because they're too sharp. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that we and you and the Forest Service could do when the whole ban is on, which essentially it will be soon, hopefully, to discourage retailers from selling firewood to people to go out in the woods and yeah, I mean, if 80% of all fires are human caused, there's one obvious idea for me at least. I mean, we can't maybe stop them from selling it, but we could certainly ask them to put up a sign that says, we the city, we the fire district, we the Forest Service want you to be aware that banning is burned. And I know we have something that's on the road right now that says, but why can't we do more to discourage retailers from having wood right out in front of their stores saying, here you go, folks, have some fire and go out in the woods and have fun.
I mean, in our campgrounds, when there are, we'll pull, because we sell firewood in our campground, but, during bans, we don't sell it.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to, some communities have firework restrictions, right? Sale of fireworks within their communities. I mean, there might be some research to see if it's possible. Again, there's enforcement that have to go along with that, say, during the time of the ban.
Well, I mean, even if it's just education, even if we could all just go together and say, hey, would you put up this big sign that says, if you're going to buy this firewood, please be aware of what the limitations are.
There's still, people can still make fire legally, though, right? Cook with their historic wood stove or something, so, I mean, there's still a market for people to buy fire that's not just for campfires.
Actually, Ray's removed it. They just didn't sell it.
All right. Well, we're unfortunately out of time. I think we had lots of other things to talk about, but we really appreciate everybody coming over and spending all this time with us, and we can keep the conversation going, obviously. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know we did this last year and enjoyed it, and so glad that we said if we do this 3 times, it's a tradition, then we'll have to do it. So, yeah.
There may be a good opportunity at the end of later in the fall after.
Yeah.